Have you ever stopped to think if the reality you know is actually real? What if everything around you, from the stars in the sky to the thoughts in your mind, is nothing more than a complex simulation? It might sound like science fiction, but this is a question that has intrigued philosophers and scientists worldwide. If you're curious to explore this possibility and discover what it means for our existence, you've come to the right place. Get ready to challenge your beliefs and expand your mind. Have you ever considered that reality might not be exactly what it seems? Imagine that everything around us, from the smallest detail to the grandest wonders, is part of a computational simulation. It's a mind-bending idea, isn't it? This hypothesis has been gaining traction in modern philosophical and scientific thought, sparking debates among philosophers and scientists alike. Why has this idea become so prominent? With advances in technology and philosophy, we've begun to question the nature of our existence. Critical thinking leads us to consider that if our minds can be simulated by advanced computers, perhaps we're living inside a massive program. No wonder this hypothesis has caused such a stir in academic circles. Moreover, the popularization of this theory in pop culture has also contributed to its prominence. Movies and books exploring this theme make us reflect on our reality. Who would have thought such complex concepts would become part of our daily conversations? But hold on, this is just the beginning of our philosophical journey. So, have you heard of Nick Bostrom's simulation hypothesis? This philosopher proposed an idea that will blow your mind. He suggests that if advanced civilizations can simulate entire universes with conscious beings, it's quite possible we are living in one of these simulations. Mind-boggling is Bostrom presents three main propositions. First, that almost all civilizations at our level of development go extinct before reaching the technological capability to create simulations. Second, that advanced civilizations have no interest in simulating minds like ours. And third, that we are almost certainly living in a simulation. If the first two are wrong, logic points to the third. It's a reasoning process that challenges critical thought and makes us rethink our existence. Now, think about this. If it's true, how does it change how we see the world and ourselves? Are our thoughts and emotions just lines of code in a cosmic computer? While this idea might seem crazy, it forces us to question the nature of reality. Speaking of reality, wait until we dive into the scientific and technological evidence that might lend even more support to this hypothesis. Shifting to scientific and technological evidence. Have you noticed how rapidly technology is advancing? Quantum computing, for example, is opening doors we never imagined. With it, processing power could reach levels capable of simulating complex realities, possibly even consciousnesses like ours. Doesn't that make your mind soar? And when we think about virtual reality, things get even more intriguing. Today, we already have games and immersive experiences that make us forget, for a few moments, about the real world. Imagine a few decades or centuries from now, where we could create simulations so perfect they'd be indistinguishable from reality. Modern philosophers love debating how these advancements could impact our critical thinking about existence. But it doesn't stop there. The future possibilities of creating complex, conscious simulations lead us to ask, if we're moving toward this capability, has another civilization already achieved it? If so, could we be the result of such advanced thought? These reflections push us to deeply ponder the nature of our reality. And speaking of reality, how about exploring how quantum physics might provide more clues about this subject? Delving into quantum physics and simulated reality. Have you heard about the quantum anomalies that puzzle scientists? Phenomena like superposition and quantum entanglement make us wonder if there's a kind of programming underlying it all. It's almost as if the universe has its own lines of code, don't you think? The observer's role in quantum physics is another mind-bender. The famous wave-particle duality shows that merely observing can alter a particle's behavior. This leads us to ask, does our mind influence reality, or are we simply uncovering the rules of this grand simulated game? Philosophers and scientists alike are scratching their heads over this mystery. And if you think about it, these ideas aren't entirely new. Have you ever considered how ancient thinkers like Plato and Descartes reflected on the nature of reality? But that's a topic for the next segment, where we'll explore historical philosophical perspectives that might help us better understand all this. Now, going back in time, let's explore historical philosophical perspectives. Have you heard of Plato's allegory of the cave? In this story, Plato invites us to think about how we perceive reality. Imagine people trapped in a cave, seeing only shadows projected on the wall. For them, those shadows are the entirety of reality. Doesn't that make you reflect on how our senses can deceive us? Speaking of doubts about the senses, we can't forget René Descartes' Cartesian skepticism. He questioned whether we could truly trust our perceptions. Descartes pondered, I think, therefore I am, placing thought as the only certainty. This critical line of thinking leads us to consider whether the mind is the only thing we truly know exists. It's quite a journey, isn't it? These philosophers challenge us to rethink what we consider real. Are we, like in the allegory, merely seeing shadows of a greater reality? Or should we, like Descartes, trust only in our ability to think? These questions prepare us to better understand the ethical and existential implications of living in a potential simulation. But that's a subject for the next chapter of our philosophical journey. Let's consider the ethical and existential implications of this simulation hypothesis. Can you imagine what this would mean for humanity? If we discovered our reality is just a simulation, we might question the purpose of our lives. Does everything we do hold meaning? This type of reflection can deeply stir anyone's mind. When it comes to free will, things get even more complex. If we're part of a program, do we really have control over our actions? Or are we merely following predefined code? This critical thinking pushes us to reevaluate our choices and how we live our lives. At the same time, it might be an invitation to live more consciously and intentionally. The nature of consciousness also comes into play here. What is the mind, after all? If our consciousness can be simulated, does that mean it's merely the result of computational processes? This idea challenges everything we know about ourselves. But perhaps, by exploring these questions, we can find new ways to understand our existence and value our experiences even more. Speaking of challenges, let's analyze the counterarguments and criticisms of the simulation hypothesis. It's crucial to consider the counterarguments and criticisms of the simulation hypothesis. Many philosophers and scientists argue that the idea of a simulated reality faces logical and empirical challenges. For instance, some question whether it's technically feasible to simulate human consciousness in all its complexity. After all, our minds are labyrinths of thoughts and emotions that may not be easily replicated by algorithm. Moreover, there are technological limitations to consider. Even with rapid advancements in computing, simulating an entire universe would require unimaginable processing power. Think of the most complex game you've ever played. Now imagine multiplying that complexity billions of times. It's quite a challenge, isn't it? This leads some to believe that the simulation hypothesis is more of a philosophical curiosity than a real possibility. There are also logical paradoxes that weaken the hypothesis. If we're in a simulation, who's simulating the simulators? This could lead to a regressus ad infinitum, an endless chain of simulators simulating simulators. This kind of critical thinking helps us question and evaluate the validity of the hypothesis. But before drawing conclusions, let's explore how pop culture has influenced our perception of this idea. Let's dive into how simulation is portrayed in pop culture. Movies like The Matrix made us question the nature of reality in ways we never imagined. Neo, the protagonist, discovers that the world he knows is merely a simulation, a thought that can twist anyone's mind. These works not only entertain, but also provoke deep reflections on our own world. Beyond movies, books like Ready Player One explore virtual universes where people spend most of their lives connected to an alternate reality. The human mind is fascinated by these possibilities, and these stories allow us to explore complex philosophical ideas in an accessible way. This shows how critical thinking and philosophy are present in our everyday entertainment. Pop culture doesn't just reflect our curiosity about existence. It also shapes how we think. It invites us to question, think critically, and expand our minds to new possibilities. Who knows? Maybe these narratives are preparing us for future discoveries about the true nature of our reality. But what does all this mean for you? Maybe it's time to put the pieces together and see where they lead us. Now that your mind is brimming with new ideas, how about putting this knowledge into practice? Are you ready to question the reality around you and challenge what you've always believed to be true? Think about how this perspective could transform the way you see the world, and even yourself. Perhaps it's the push you've been waiting for to spark a profound change in your life. So, I ask you, will you keep accepting things as they are, or will you seek to understand what's really behind reality? Share your thoughts, talk with others, and see where this new path can take you. After all, it's through critical thinking that humanity evolves. And if you want to keep exploring these intriguing topics, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss any new content and can continue expanding the horizons of your mind.